Hi, I'm Daniel Lucas, and welcome to Book 101 Review. Book 101 is all about the books that I've read for the last 40 years. And today I have my special guest. He's a strategy plus business therapy, helping owners replace duct tape with clarity, other than Mr. Brady Helm. Welcome, Mr. Brady, on Book 101 Review. And can you please introduce more about yourself that I miss?
Hey, Daniel, thanks so much for having me on. Happy to be here. Yeah, so a little bit more about me and kind of that tagline is helping replace duct tape with clarity. I work with a lot of single and solopreneurs, entrepreneurs, CEOs, from the startup stages to the well established stage. And essentially, what I help them do is understand the gap between what their business is and what their craft is, and then bring the two together with clarity and purpose to understand what it is they're trying to accomplish, deconstructing that to start the first step. What is the goal, or what are we trying to fix, and how do we get started doing that?
And thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world, Mr. Brady. Thank you. And today let's talk about what are you actually building. So tell us. Let's start with the big picture. When you strip away the daily tasks and metrics, what is the core human problem you are trying to solve or fundamental need you are aiming to fulfill?
Well, that's essentially it, right? That's the question. And it's different for everybody, because when you scour the internet looking for answers, you typically find the same set of answers. Do this, put this system in place, do this, this, and this with your business, or even just with your personal life, right? It's what everybody thinks you should do, that big word, the big S word, should. And I think a lot of people don't take enough time to recognize and reflect on what authentically resonates with themselves first, right? We're always looking out. So, in terms of business, we're always looking out that people say, go find your target client. Well, what I've realized over the years, and I've learned this the hard way, in the slow, painful way, is that you can go looking for who you think your target client is. But if you're not looking in first and reflecting on what you're doing and being purposeful on what I call it the spark, what sparks inside of you that resonates with you, that you're actually trying to bring into the space, bring into the world, bring into the business atmosphere that you're working in, or maybe it's not related to business, but it's something that you're really passionate about. We don't look at ourselves first. And so the question behind what are you actually building, I think is so impactful because we look at an end result and we go, oh, I want to have, X amount of clients, or I want to have this amount of revenue, or I want to have this amount of people join my community so that we can all be together in this cause, right? But what are you building? What are you as a person? What authentically and energetically aligns with you that you're trying to bring into the space? And so asking that first question, what are you actually building? I think is so important because the truth often I find lies so many layers deep. And it's not that people are purposefully trying to be deceptive. It's that they're not quite in touch with what they're actually trying to accomplish. So if you were to tell me one of your goals and what you're looking to do, my first response would probably be, that's really interesting. Tell me why. And then as you explain it and unpack it more, I would have more why questions. Why did you arrive at that conclusion? And what is it that you're trying to accomplish there? Because when we strip it all the way down and remove those expectations, and like I said, the what we should do versus what we actually are honest and authentic about trying to create, then we have a lot more clarity to start from.
Interesting, Mr. Brady. The word building implies a lasting structure. What are the foundational values or principles that serve as the bedrock for everything you are creating?
So when it comes to building something, um, we often think of an end result, like I mentioned. But I think one of the biggest questions we fail to ask right out of the gate is this sustainable? We want to build a legacy, or we want to build a career, or we want to build, maybe we want to build a family with somebody. We want to build something in our lives that has specific meaning. Okay, so establishing and understanding what that meaning is first and foremost. Establishing and looking at what the end goal is. But is it sustainable? Because you can build something and not be able to maintain it. You can build a business that eventually ends up running you because you have built yourself around it instead of, and I work, I'll speak primarily to the business space because I work mostly in the business space, but it really applies to life. Is that if we're not aware of what we're trying to build in accordance to how it fits with us, then we ended up changing ourselves to fit around what it is we think we're building. And when you do that, I find that inevitably will come up with a lot of pain points later in your life, be it immediately or down the road. And so building a structure that lasts, I think that you have to start with that authenticity that is something that you can then look at as a type of roadmap to be able to inform the decisions you make in what you're building so that it fits the type of life you're trying to live. And that can apply to just about anything, if that makes sense.
Makes sense, Mr. Brady. So, how do you differentiate between what are you doing and what you're actually building? Where do those two things often get confused?
So those things often get confused in what we think is the purpose. So we look at end results and we think that those are the purpose. But the end results are actually a byproduct. So again, taking the business metric, somebody comes to me and they say, well, and I say, okay, what are we doing here? Why are we talking? What are we working on? And they say, well, we want to increase revenues. And I say, okay, everybody does. That's business 101. There's nothing wrong with that. But that in and of itself is not a goal. It's a byproduct. It's understanding, do you have a great product or service that works, that people want and need? Does it bring value? Does it solve problems for people? Do people have a high understanding of what you do and know how to interact with you? Um, just down to the fundamentals of, are you clear on what you're doing? Does it work well? Does it solve people's needs? Do they know how to interact with you, and do they receive value from it in the end? Those things are actually going to be an exchange of value, and then revenues are a byproduct of doing those things well, having a clear business strategy, knowing what you're driving for, knowing what problems you're trying to solve. And there's a lot more details to that, but that's the fundamental basics of it. And so if we do those things well, then the goal, being revenues, is not really the goal. It's just a byproduct of it. It's a scoreboard. It's a way to measure what we did or didn't do well. And I think that we get into doing things that we think are going to have certain results instead of focusing on the thing itself. For myself, I had a picture of my life when I was much younger, that I was going to be financially successful. I was going to have a certain lifestyle. I was going, things were just going to work out. But I didn't have a clue how to make that happen. I didn't even have a direction to pick and start and say, okay, well, what am I going to do to take the first step towards that goal? Because everybody wants the quality of life that they want. But what are you building is a question that I wish I had asked myself when I was 17, 18, just out of high school and trying to figure out what the next branch in my life was going to look like. I didn't have a clue. I didn't have a purpose to what I was trying to build. I just had a vague, broad, cliche end result in mind. And when you don't have a very hard sense of direction, then you don't know where you're going. And most people, when they're young, don't have a very strong sense of direction. But something I realized later in my life is, if you put it this way, you don't run from something, you run to something. So if you have an end goal in mind, you can start deconstructing it and understanding what's going to get you there.
Interesting indeed, Dr. Brady. Imagine it's 20 years from now and your project's or company's life's work is vividly successful. What does the landscape look like because of what you built?
Oh, that's a great question, and a challenging one at that. So, 20 years from now, everything looks successful. Everything is successful based on the goals. But what does the landscape look like? Uh, it's a little bit cliche, but I think we have to stay a student always, because when you get there, the proverbial there, it's not going to look and feel like you think it is. And I can't say exactly what, there's some basic foundational pieces that I can say, okay, so these are no longer questions, right? The basic hierarchy of needs, food, water, shelter. Those have been taken care of. Those are long past. We're not worried about those, but there's always a new aspect of something that you're trying to accomplish or create that you didn't anticipate when you get there. So I think always staying curious, always being willing to learn, and always staying a student would at least be the tool sets that I would say are what's valuable to continue growing and evolving. Because once you're there, we think that you kick your feet up and life looks good. It just runs itself, but it doesn't, because the there is now your newest starting point to where you're going next. And so that question that uh, of what are you building, I think repeats at every stage when you get whatever the proverbial there is. What have I built? What does it look like now? Now, what am I building? And it's not a discontentment. It's an understanding what you've accomplished. It's enjoying those accomplishments, but it's also knowing that you don't just cease to exist at that point. You're still alive. You're still growing. You're still learning, and there's still more to see and do.
The blueprint strategy and intention, Mr. Brady. Every builder has a blueprint. What are the one or two non-negotiable lines in your blueprint that you will not compromise on even it's difficult or expensive?
So, what authentically serves your purpose above all else? And I don't mean above other people. I mean what authentically serves your purpose that you're trying to build, what resonates with you, and how do you convey that into what you're building. That's part of the blueprint that I wish I would have had, because when I mentioned that roadmap that I didn't have when I was 17, 18, coming out of high school and trying to decide what to do next with my life, and the idea that I wanted to be successful someday, and then I was just going to get there sooner than not. The problem that I had that is now a non-negotiable for me is that I was following everybody else's instructions. And that worked for them. And now, just to clarify, I am an advocate of saying, okay, we'll focus on the people that did what you want to do, and then what they did to accomplish that, and then figure out their framework and adapt that to yours, right? So it's not that you can't stand on the shoulders of giants so that you can look even further, right? There are those that have gone before you that have aspects of what you're trying to accomplish, be it business or otherwise, that are the proverbial expert in their field. Great, rely on those resources. That's fantastic. But the non-negotiable is it always has to align with what you've deemed and decided to be your purpose. And it's not that your purpose has to be etched in stone and it never changes, but it does have to be authentic and effective. Because we're taught so much, at least I was taught this in school coming up, especially in the US, and the culture is, you follow the line, you follow the path and the steps laid out for you, and then you'll have a certain success based on how well you followed the rules and did the thing. And that may be true on a very, 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 very basic fundamental level, but it's not true for the individual human being. It doesn't work that way. So the non-negotiable is find out what's the spark inside of you that gets you excited. And you can't just go on inspiration and excitement for everything. A lot of it's, hard work and dedication. You have to be diligent. But what is it that connects with the thing that you're actually trying to build? And then use that as something of a compass to guide you through the next steps in the next process. And don't just follow what everybody else says you're supposed to do just because they say you're supposed to do it.
Interesting, Mr. Brady. And how do you ensure the day-to-day hammer and nails work consistently aligns with the grand vision of what you are building? What is your system for checking that alignment?
So I like to start with your values. Your values, I put it this way, your values will inform your mission. And then your mission is more than just a catchy post-it note you put on your desk or a phrase you put on the wall. Your mission needs to inform everything about what you're trying to embody and encompass into what you're doing. So you get pretty detailed in clarifying your mission. Your mission then builds what I call your brand, be it your personal brand, because again, this doesn't just have to be business, it could be your life, just in other facets and areas. But your mission informs your brand. Oh, excuse me, your mission informs the culture. The culture is who you are, how you want to show up, how you want to show up in your company, with your people, whatever it is. That's the culture that rallies behind the mission. Then the culture informs the brand. And the brand is, okay, that's what we look like from the outside in. That's how other people see me and perceive me, because that's what I'm making sure conveys. And it's not um, a fake aspect. It's not even a facade. It's not a mask. That's why I say your values inform your mission. Then your mission informs your brand, because it has to be authentic from the inside out. And then when people look from the outside in, they see what you're about. It's how it feels to interact with you. It's how it looks to interact with you, and how um, the experience on an experiential level, right? So how do you break that down in the hammer and nails of it all to make sure that you're guiding what you're trying to do? You need to be really clear on what your mission is, because you can have an end result, and a lot of times people confuse the mission with the end result. And so you think, okay, the end result's there, I'm still on track. And that's really important. But take that mission and turn it into something that completely embodies the end result. Set that way off in the distance, right? I call that your waypoint. And that at any point in your day, your week, your month, uh, you can look up, and as long as you can still see that waypoint, is this still within the parameters that I established? Whatever that is. If you can look up and see it, then you know you're on track. And so then I tell people, you don't have to stress as much about the day to day. You might swerve right, you might swerve left. That's okay. Because as long as you didn't get completely turned around, you can look up and you can see that waypoint off in the distance, go, okay, we're still heading in the right direction. I may have gone too far to the right, too far to the left. I didn't make as much progress today as I wanted to. That's okay. As long as you can still see it, you're still making progress.
Mr. Brady, what is the shiny object or tempting opportunity you had to consciously say no because it will be taken your off mission from what you're truly trying to build?
Ooh, what is a shiny object that could take you off from your target and your mission and what you're trying to build?
Yes, please.
I think that's the quick wins. Um, there's the grind, and at some point it gets really hard. And I'm not for hustle culture anymore. I once was, hustle harder. I don't think that's real. I think that's a facade that somewhat keeps us stuck, and so we get stuck in that pain of it all, and we think we're being effective, but in reality, we're not being effective. We're just working harder and moving slower. The other shiny, and that's not necessarily a shiny object. That's almost like a counter to the shiny object, but we feel really noble for doing that. Like, oh, I'm hustling so hard. I'm not sleeping very much. I'm not taking very good care of myself because I'm driving so hard towards the mission. And so we get this self affirmation in almost in an unhealthy way from that hustle and grind culture. The shiny of it all, though, I think, is being thrown off course by things that inspire. I'm building this thing, but that thing looks better. They're having that success. It's kind of like the phrase "doing it all for the gram," right? Like everybody goes on these vacations, and they're like, "Build the life that I've got." I'm on this beach all by myself in this tropical location, and it's amazing. But what they're not showing you is the 500 other people that are also on that beach. They're just faced the other way, right? They managed to get that one shot out over the blue water that nobody was swimming in. So I think we get caught up by our perception of what's new and exciting, what other people are doing that might be better than what we're doing, or we perceive as better than what we're doing. And those can really take you off course really quickly. is comparing. And you're like, well, comparing isn't really a shiny object, but it is. We see somebody else achieving something or doing something that we think we should have. And we're like, oh, shoot, well, maybe I'm doing it wrong. My goal isn't really achieving that. So maybe I should totally shift my focus and achieve that. And I think that'll completely take you off course more often than not. And we also get stuck on the short wins that might feel good, but are they part of a bigger picture, right? If you're saving for a much bigger financial goal, you could go out and spend a lot of money on a really short-term satisfying experience. But then that's actually going to set you back from the long-term goal, having that short-term experience. So just being really careful to weigh and measure what is what you're trying to build, and then what pieces actually fit into that. Because sometimes the shiny things will fit into that if they actually align with the goal and aren't going to set you backwards. But most of the time they don't. Most of the time they're just, oh, I'm distracted from the goal because this is really cool. I'm going to start building what they're building. And then essentially you pivot and you start over when you already made so much progress. You just needed to push a little bit harder.
Mr. Brady, before we wrap up our discussion for today, I'm inviting you to please do listen to my other podcast, people, because my Abstract Essay is already in 5th season, Abstract Poetry in 2nd season, and my Book 101 review in 5th season too, Comedy 101 in 3rd season, and my Food 101 in 5th season as well, Geography 101 4th season, and my Baby Podcast Law 101 and Mental Health 101, Love Letters in 4th season, and my Movie 101 review, and Music 101 is 4th season as well, and Science 101 and Sex 101 in its 2nd season. Please listen to them wherever you listen your podcast. So finally, to help our audience with their own building projects, what is the book that has profoundly shaped your philosophy?
I think one of the books that has shaped my philosophy and my perspective on things is The Design of Everyday Things by Don Norman. And it comes from a little bit different approach because he's about zooming out and being able to see the forest as well as the trees. Just because something is the way it is doesn't mean that's highest and best use. That doesn't mean that it's something that functions like it should. It just means that it is. But there's always the question looming of how might we make it better? And so I think taking into account that and the ideation that we should, there I use that word, that we could be putting into our lives and what we're trying to build, and looking at it through that lens of the question, how might we make it better? So for me, it was The Design of Everyday Things by Don Norman was a huge influence on how I view strategy and projects and helping people get clear insights on what they're trying to build.
Mr. Brady Helm, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world. So can you please invite our listeners to support your business, your advocacy, or whatever projects that you're doing right now?
Yeah, you can connect with me on stiracreative.com, and I would love to have a chat and collaborate with anybody that has questions out there about how they might make their business better or how they might create the roadmap to accomplish what they're trying to do.
Yes, people, let's support Mr. Brady Helm, because if you support him, for sure, more and more empowering business like this to come. So, Mr. Brady, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much, Dana.
More people, see you soon.